You're probably a little disappointed. You thought maybe there'd be something inside, a reason, a direction, a sign that tells you what to do next, something to explain the silence, the distance, the plan that didn't work out, the version of you that didn't become what you hoped, but instead, just emptiness. No answer, no closure, no clean explanation to wrap around the aching parts of your life and say, this is why. And that's the part that stings the most. Because some part of you already knows the answer. It's not hiding. It's been there. In the quiet hesitations, the unread messages, the friendships you stopped fighting for, the late night thoughts you keep numbing, the decisions you made and still regret. Not because they were wrong, but because they cost something you can't get back. You wanted the envelope to say that it wasn't your fault, that the effort mattered, that the dream isn't dead, it's just delayed, that the relationship could have worked if they had just tried, that you're not too late, that you're still becoming someone worth trusting, worth choosing, worth loving, that it wasn't all for nothing. But it doesn't say any of that. It says nothing, because it's not here to rescue you. It's here to return you to yourself, to that moment you stopped trusting your own instincts, to that version of you who quietly gave up on asking for more, to the truth you've been circling around for years. Maybe it's not about finding the answer. Maybe it's about finally letting go of the one you wanted it to be. Because sometimes we don't need more time. We need more honesty. And the question isn't, why didn't I get the answer I was looking for? It's, what if the answer was never missing? I just didn't want to admit it. So maybe you opened the envelope because some part of you hoped it would hold a map, a direction, a reason to keep trying. But instead you're left with a mirror, and the reflection doesn't look how you thought it would by now. That's where this begins. You had a version of how this would go. By this age, this season, this version of you that wakes up each morning and wonders if you took a wrong turn somewhere. You thought you'd be further ahead, less confused, more certain. Maybe you imagined a stable relationship, a career that felt like it mattered, a group of people who actually understood you, without you having to shrink to be understood. But instead, you're stuck between two lives, the one you're living and the one you quietly compare it to, even if you've never said it out loud. That version of you is confident. They don't replay old conversations at night. They don't second-guess their worth based on someone else's silence. They don't scroll through other people's milestones wondering what they're doing wrong. But you do. And some days, that gap between where you are and where you thought you'd be feels like failure. You wonder if you missed the sign, if you settled too early, or waited too long. If the people who hurt you were supposed to teach you something, or just broke something you're still trying to fix. And it's not always dramatic. Sometimes it's just quiet. The career that pays your bills but drains your soul. The friendship that feels performative. The relationship that's stable but suffocating. The passion you lost somewhere between survival and self-abandonment. No big breakdown, just a slow forgetting of who you meant to be. And the worst part, you can't even point to the exact moment it happened. Because it didn't. It happened gradually, in the little compromises, the tiny silences, the times you told yourself, it's fine, when it wasn't. The times you stayed, in places, in jobs, in dynamics, that didn't choose you back. Freud called this repetition, compulsion. When we unconsciously recreate familiar pain because it feels more tolerable than the unknown. So you stay, not because it's good, but because it's predictable. And every time you try to break the cycle, the doubts creep in. What if I'm being too dramatic? What if this is just what life is? What if I walk away and nothing better comes? That's the trap. You become loyal to the version of you that coped, even if that version is exhausted, even if that version keeps pretending. But maybe it's not about becoming who you thought you'd be. Maybe it's about becoming who you actually are. Beneath the fear, the pressure, the comparisons, the roles you never meant to audition for. And maybe that begins not with fixing everything, but by finally admitting what's not working. The job, the friendship, the narrative that says your worth is based on how well you endure. You were never supposed to build your life on top of what broke you. So if it feels like something's missing, you're not lost. You're just being called to stop performing the life you thought you had to live and start listening to the one that's quietly waiting underneath. Maybe it's not about waiting anymore. Maybe it's about finally telling the truth. Not the polished version you post online. Not the excuses you make when someone asks how you're doing. The one you've been scared to admit, even to yourself. So, you say it in passing, I'm just tired. But what you really mean is, I'm tired of pretending this version of my life is working. You laugh when you say you're overwhelmed, but the truth is, you've been in survival mode for years. Not healing, not rebuilding, just treading water in a life you don't fully recognize anymore. You tell people you're just taking time to figure things out, but what you're really doing is grieving the version of yourself you thought you'd be by now. You keep saying it'll get better, but you've been saying that for so long, you don't even remember what better used to look like. You've convinced yourself this is just a rough patch, but deep down, you're scared this is your life. And that fear, it doesn't always shout. Sometimes it just quietly follows you around, in the moment before you fall asleep, in the silence after you close another unread message, in the way your chest tightens when someone asks about your plans. We build entire personalities out of avoidance, out of deflection, out of unfinished conversations and half-truths we hope no one ever challenges. But the truth doesn't disappear just because you don't speak it. It waits, it builds, and eventually, it leaks out. In the way you snap at someone who didn't deserve it. In the way you cancel plans because you just need rest. In the way your body tenses around joy, like it doesn't feel safe yet. Because when you bury what's real for too long, it doesn't stay buried. It starts to rot, quietly, invisibly, underneath the life you're pretending is fine. Freud believed that repression was only part of the story, that underneath all our attempts to appear normal or strong, there's something deeper pulling at us, something darker, older, and harder to name. He called it Thanatos, the death drive, a subconscious urge not just toward destruction, but toward familiar pain, toward self-sabotage, toward the collapse of whatever version of ourselves we can't maintain anymore. You don't just avoid the truth because it hurts. You avoid it because deep down, some part of you believes you deserve to stay stuck. That's the quiet cruelty of unresolved pain. It doesn't just limit what you do, it distorts what you believe you're allowed to want. Sometimes the bravest thing isn't starting over. It's admitting what you already know. That you stayed too long in something that broke you. That you settled, not because you're weak, but because you were exhausted from hoping. That you've outgrown the things that once gave you comfort, and now they only keep you small. That you know what you need to do. You're just not ready to lose the version of yourself that doesn't do it. And that's where the death drive whispers loudest. It convinces you to repeat what hurts, to re-enter cycles that keep you powerless, to find safety in the exact patterns that keep you from becoming who you're meant to be. This isn't about shame. This is about seeing yourself fully, not the part that keeps it together, but the part that's been asking for help without saying a word. You don't have to fix everything right now, but you do have to stop lying to yourself. Because if you can't be honest here, in the quiet, in the stillness, then when? If you want peace, you have to stop making pain your home. If you want to grow, you have to stop planting roots in your own hesitation. And if you want out, you have to stop waiting for someone else to give you permission. The truth isn't buried. It's been right in front of you this whole time. But saying it out loud would mean finally letting go of the version of you who kept waiting for something else. And that's the hardest part, because once you stop waiting, you have to start living with what's left. There's a version of you that still checks, still replays the last conversation, still wonders if they'll reach out, if the door will open, if there's something you missed. It's not just about them. It's not even just about the thing that didn't work out. It's about the part of you that wanted so badly to believe you were wrong, that you gave up too early, that the story had a twist ending, that love, or purpose, or meaning would find its way back if you just stayed still long enough. But some stories don't end that way. Some stories don't end at all. They just stop, and the silence that follows isn't closure. It's a vacuum, a space where your brain fills in every possibility except the one that's true. That this was it. Not the version you wanted, not the lesson you were ready for, not the ending you thought you deserved, but an ending nonetheless. And the sooner you accept that, the sooner you get to start something real. Because whether it's a person, a plan, a dream, or a former self, you can't resurrect what wasn't meant to survive. And sometimes the act of holding on isn't strength. It's grief wearing pride like armor. It's the unconscious belief that suffering has to mean something, or else you suffered for nothing. That's what Freud called the death drive, a compulsion not toward life, but toward the repetition of familiar pain. We keep circling the same disappointment, not because it heals us, but because it feels like home. And when letting go feels like death, we stall in the hallway of almost closure, rewriting the ending in our heads so we don't have to admit we've already reached it. But what if you did? What if there's no more clarity coming? What if the one last talk won't change anything? What if the apology you want would only reopen a wound you finally let scar? Let that sink in. You're not weak for wanting answers. You're not broken for checking the lock one more time before walking away. You're human. But you're also done. Done begging for explanations from silence. Done giving your peace away to the hope of a different past. Done stalling the next chapter of your life out of loyalty to the one that hurt you. This is where it ends. Not because it's fair, not because it's satisfying, but because it has to. You've already lived the version where you keep waiting. You know how that one goes. Now it's time for something else. Not a miracle, not a sign, not a perfect new beginning. Just space. To be honest, to be unfinished, to be free. Because not everything that fades is a failure. Sometimes it's just making room for the version of you who doesn't need the envelope to say anything at all. If this found you at the right time, or said something you've been trying to say to yourself, then you're not alone. This space is here for moments like that, for questions that don't have easy answers, for the in-between parts of healing, growing, and letting go. So if you want to keep going, with honesty, with clarity, and maybe a little more peace than before, you can subscribe. And when you're ready, I'll be here.